Uncle Doc was the second husband of my rich aunt. When her husband Rudolph died and left her an immense amount of money, they were, really money. They had a chauffeur.
Wow.
They had a big house on the Sheridan Road. Anyway, she remarried a man by the name of Comey, that lasted a very short period of time. Her kids were hysterical about her getting involved with people who were going to grab the money, and were not very nice to them. She used to have these buffets at the Belton Stratford Hotel on Sunday, and looking around, the Comeys, we were the only ones that were pleasant to the Comeys, so they were pleasant to us. And I remember there was a kid in the enlarged family who was about my age. But then Ella went out to California. This was after my grandmother died. She took my grandmother in to live with her, and she was very responsible to her. When my grandmother died, she went out to California and met a man, I forget his name, but he was known as Doc. Doc was, Doc Bernstein was his name. Doc was a retired Ford dealer, and my aunt had met him, I think at El Morocco's or one of the big clubs, and this was what she wanted, and she settled $250,000 on his first wife, or the wife he was there with, and took out a $250,000 insurance policy on her life, the beneficiary of Doc. And Doc was a Republican, but he looked like Roosevelt. He took great pride in that. And everybody knew he was a gigolo. They would come to Chicago for 6 weeks every year because the family, besides there had been all sorts of legal provisions to protect the money, there was the fear of the community property laws in California, I guess of anything that appreciated anyway. When Ella died, which I estimate was between 53 and 57, because I was still in the mill, I remember that. I assumed that she was going to be buried in the family plot at Waldheim. Nothing happened. Anyway, it wasn't a big concern of mine, but my mother called us up and told us that they were bringing Ella's body back to intern her at Waldheim. Right. And I managed to be there with my sister, and there were a couple of Ella's first cousins there. We got there first, being the poorest relatives, of course, and the most insecure and the most anxious about the will, I guess. Doc was very cordial to my mother, and then 2 of Ella's cousins were there, and who he knew less of, but by this time they had become financially quite successful, and he went into a great deal about how my aunt's children, the daughters who were out there, came and grabbed all the furs, etc., etc., and the jewelry. My mother told us in a side whisper since he was probably pissed that he couldn't sell. Anyway, then her sons came, Rudolph and Leo. No, not Rudolph and Leo, Harold and Leo. And they had nothing to do with us since Ella left Chicago, and they really had nothing to. I don't remember much having to do with them in general. They were about 15 years older than me, maybe as Anyway, everybody's there, and the rabbi is there, and Doc is prancing around, and all of a sudden he gets hysterical, and he practically threw himself in the casket, on the casket. And this is a very reformed German Jewish family, and that stuff don't go. Anyway, I was completely mystified, as was my mother, etc., etc. Well, the truth was that they had buried her under the name of Ellen Lederer. Well, her legal name was Ellen Lederer Bernstein. Anyway, it turned out that Doc had kept the body, you know, at Forest Lawn, but not in turn till he settled with the boys on, he got, as I understand it, $40,000 for the body. And then he went down to their office, which was Tavern Pale Beer, which they owned at the time, and got another $15,000 for the insult. And that evening he called my mother for a date.
Oh.
But she was too smart and too scared to go out with him. But that was Uncle Doc. And what happened to Doc since then, I don't know. He disappeared from our life.